Hello everyone and welcome to another Foil Friday. How's everyone doing? Hope you had a wonderful week so far. End of the week for most people, I guess, if you have like a 9 to 5 weekday job. How's it going? Hope you're doing well. Terrence Howard made an appearance on the Joe Rogan program recently, which I think is still one of the most popular, if not the most popular podcast on the planet, depressingly enough. And, oh boy, lots of stuff is said, so this is going to be an interesting one. Started a little later today because I was checking in on a friend's cat while they're out of town. So yeah, a little bit later stream today. Cool beans. As you can see, Femi Kruger won the costume vote for today. If you'd like to vote on what costume I wear tomorrow, make sure you vote on the Discord. We are also raising for another costume month. We are a little over halfway through this one. So if you want it to keep on going, I guess, you can tip. Still working on the May sub goal, and that's it. So let's get into it. Hello, Royal Anne. How's it going? Inventory management. Tim Othy. How's it going? And in Twitch chat, hello Trey, how do? Janerdy, thanks for a 3-stream streak, says Hannah's probably the only way I'd ever tolerate watching Joe Rogan. Never mind Joe Rogan when Terrence was around. Puka, thanks for 42 months. And Amber says, Tinfoil ahoy, how do it do, Hannah? It do pretty well. It do pretty well. Have I seen Terrence's old math stuff? I have. We've covered it before on Tinfoil Tuesdays or Fridays. Basically, if you're not up to date on the Terrence Howard situation, Terrence Howard is an American actor who has been in a variety of things. I think he won an Emmy, or it was at least nominated for a show he was in. I'm not exactly sure. He's a good actor. Unfortunately, at some point, he has gone completely off the rails and believes he has reinvented science. He believes he has discovered that 1 times 1 equals 2 instead of 1, which is the actual answer, and a variety of things. Now, I want to point this out, and this is kind of a theme of the video, and that is, as much as wealth and fame can insulate you from consequences of your actions, look at someone like Donald Trump for an example of that, it can also insulate you from help that you desperately need. Terrence Howard, and we're gonna, let's just be frank, we're gonna be making fun of some of the strange things that he says. Terrence Howard is genuinely probably mentally ill. Like, this is beyond just someone who's narcissistic and engaging in, like, an extreme example of Dunning-Kruger effect. This person actually is probably dealing with some sort of, like, disorder, like schizophrenia or something, but he's so wealthy, and he has so many people around him who I assume are just yes men, he's not going to receive the help he needs. And then Joe Rogan decides to give him 3 hours to just vomit. To just vomit words. And as much as I have no respect for Joe Rogan in the first place, on some level you'd think he'd push back a little. I know he's known for not pushing back, but he has an audience of millions of people, some of whom are also potentially mentally ill, who might be schizophrenic, who might have other paranoid disorders, or might just be not educated and believe Terrence Howard. And that's not good. That's irresponsible. Spotify should be fucking ashamed for platforming this shit. Toreador says the Dunning-Kruger effect, but spelled like Freddy Krueger. Funny. So anyway, let's get into it. I don't think we'll probably get through the whole thing today, especially when you take into account the pausing, so this might be a multi-parter, or just a one-off if we get halfway through and are like, alright, we get the idea. We'll feel it out. Let's get into it, shall we? Buckle up.
How did you get started with all this?
I didn't come into this world the way everybody else does, I don't think. I used to think that everybody had the similar experience, but like if I asked you, what was your first memory in life?
Howard broke onto the big screen in Mr. Holland's Opus. Oh yeah, with Richard I like that movie. I like Mr. Holland's Opus. He was nominated for an Academy Award for his work in the 2005 film Hustle and Flow, and later was nominated for a Golden Globe for his performance in Lee Daniels' The Butler.
What would it?
I like Mr. Holland's opus. Yeah, he played the kid that ended up going to Vietnam and dying. I think it was Vietnam. Not Korea. Could be wrong, though.
I don't think I know.
Check out Mr. Holland's opus. It's not like an incredible movie, but it's pretty good.
My first memory was almost like when you're dreaming and you're falling and you hit the bottom and you wake up.
Mm-hmm.
That was my first memory, but I didn't wake up here. I was inside my mother's womb. And I was about maybe 6 months inside the womb. And I'm like, okay, don't forget I'm here. Okay. Don't forget.
He's claiming he remembers being in the womb, which is literally impossible based on how brains develop. You cannot develop and retain memories pre-birth. I mean, you can't do it for, like, the first deal of your life, much less before you are birthed. Trey says, like, what I hate about Joe Rogan and misinformation is inherently toxic, and he can spread it so far he's gonna reach someone who believes whatever bullshit you present. Oh yeah, it's ridiculous.
Go to sleep. Wake up again. Now something's moving in front of you. And you're like, oh, that's my friend. But I had a different name for it. I didn't know it was my hand. But I knew I had a title for it. Go back to sleep, all of those things. Then ultimately you get ready to come out. I remember all of that.
You remember coming out?
Remember being compressed, and you want to panic, but you're flooded with like some serotonin and dopamine to where you feel relaxed. You go right back to sleep. You remember being born. I remember being circumcised. I remember the whole nine.
That's a shame. You'd hope out of all the things you forget, the circumcision is in there, right? Bummer. Now we know he's circumcised also, if you ever were curious about Terrence Howard's penis. There you go. H-Beard says, so he thinks he's a real-life version of the titular character from Powder. That kind of explains his electric sun beliefs. I've not seen Powder.
Proof of it was
how you just let people claim shit? Right, this drives me nuts. As someone who's like, wait, what? I'm a very, wait, what kind of person? Like, I'm rude about it in conversations. If you say something I don't understand, I'm gonna interrupt you like a bitch, because I suck. But, like, how can you listen to this for hours? Out of 3 hours, this interview is 3 hours and 8 minutes. Joe Rogan speaks for 13 minutes. That means the rest of the, 60, 80, 120, so 108, like 100, no, wait, 60, 120, 180, so the rest of the 168 minutes is just Terrence Howard saying nonsense.
When my wife Mira, that you just met, when she was 6 months pregnant with my son Kieran, I wanted to prove to her what I was talking about. So I put...
Yeah, I did know about the Robert Downey Jr. thing.
A light on her stomach every day at 6 o'clock at night. And I would move that light back and forth, and I'd put a song on for a week straight. On Saturday, after a week, I didn't put the light there, and I didn't do the music. And he pushed up on her stomach. And then when I put the light there, he started following the light. And for the next 2 months, we did this every night, and he would go all the way around her belly, back and forth.
I don't understand how he considers this to be in any way evidence that he remembers being in the womb. Like, it's not a secret that, like, fetuses can be reactive. Like, that's not a secret that at a certain stage of development they'll, like, push and, like, people feel like, the bellies of pregnant people. Like, people are aware of that. That's not a secret. That doesn't mean that you have a secret memory of being in the womb.
Always pushing on it, I didn't understand at the time that maybe I've interfered with the development process, and maybe he's wrapped the cord around his neck. I shouldn't have done all of this, but it came out wonderful and fine. And this little boy, first thing he wanted to do is see light. He loved lights from that early stage, and I can ask him the square...
He loved lights? He loved lights.
He loved lights.
How do you determine if a baby loves lights?
in that early stage, and I can ask him the square root of 2, the square root of 5, the square root of that, the square root of pi, and he will run it off. But he's just like his person.
How old is this guy's child? Fenekigami says, Terrence, infamy is so different, so shattering to your self-identity that Freud literally assumed the reason that you don't remember... Oh, infancy, rather. Terrence, infancy is so different, so shattering to your self-identity that Freud literally assumed the reason that you don't remember before you're like 3 at the earliest is that infancy is too traumatic and it's repressed.
Personality is like Forrest Gump, you know, to where he's just loving and...
Don't... Look, I know that Forrest Gump is like a lovable character, but I don't think anyone wants their kid compared to Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump is, in his own words, not a smart man, Jenny. I don't think you want to compare your kid to Forrest Gump.
I have the square root of that, the square root of pi, and he will run it off.
See, Forrest Gump couldn't do that. Rain Man could do that. That's a different movie.
Run it off, but he's just like his personality is.
Babies love boob-shaped things. Am I a baby?
Like Forrest Gump, you know, to where he's just loving and wants everybody to be around him and care. But for me, that's where it started, in there. And then when I was about 5 years old, I had another dream, and the room filled up with like this fluid, a dark fluid, and I could see the ripples of it moving around, and there was a being there, and I remember being walked through that fluid with him, and I was trying to look up at him, and I couldn't turn my head to look at him, and he had his hand straight. I knew his voice, but I did not know who it was, but I felt confident and comfortable. And as we moved along this dark blue fluid path with like chartreuse covering the, you know, how when you look into a pool and you see the ripples, and if you're at the bottom of the pool, you'll see the ripples overlapping. That's what it looked like. And then when we got to the end of it, he said to me, if you could have anything in the world, what would it be? Now, we were really poor. My dad had just gotten out of prison, you know, for manslaughter. I didn't have much, but I said to him, I want to know how everything works. And at that moment, he used his left hand and he opened up the door. And there was this mansion, big brown doors. And inside of it was this crystalline flowers. Big crystalline flowers, like a giant, like 5 feet across.
I feel like I'm crazy, because I never have detailed dreams like this. My dreams are a little vague. Like, I can tell you some dreams I've had. When I was a little kid, I had a dream where I was in the laundry room, and I turned around, and the Wolfman, like the 1930s Wolfman, was in the, like, trapped in a thing, and it was like, scary 1930s Wolfman. Which is still a great movie, by the way. All those movies are great. Abbott and Costello Meet the Wolfman is actually pretty fucking good, too. Anyway, the point I was trying to make, I don't remember dreams as vividly as most people seem to.
And every
like this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened.
time I tried to see his face,
I don't know, I just remember locations, kind of, vaguely. Fenekigami says, Terrence, every mammal loves light, that's not special. Also, if you give kids multiplication tables, they'll recite them by repetition, even super young. Now, prove the, say, 4-year-old can do long division in algebra, and I'll be impressed. I think Terrence is so uneducated that mundane child achievements are impressive to him. No, I think he's actually ill. I think he needs some intervention, is the problem. Could be wrong. Wolfman's got nards. Monster Squad.
He would reach in,
which came out on 4K from Kino Lorber earlier this year or last year. Pretty good transfer. Would recommend.
And hand me another shape. And I was so fascinated with the shapes because they didn't look like the platonic solids. They didn't look like anything I'd ever seen before. And he would hand me these shapes, and each shape was different and amazing. And I woke up from that dream. But after that moment, anytime something strange would happen in a dream, I had the powers of inception. Anytime
He means lucid dreaming.
Something I would be naked at school. I would say, I'm not naked. I must be dreaming. And immediately I would run out of the school or run out of wherever I was, and I would find that mansion again. And I had access.
You've heard that from others that don't have a mind's eye? What a bummer. I feel like I'm missing out on, like, so much of the human experience not being able to picture things in my head. Again, I've talked about this before. I think that's part of the reason I'm into movies. Because of, like, you were like, oh, I want to see a train explode. In your head, you could just do that. I gotta watch a movie to see a train explode. Pat. It's a detriment.
I have now. The proof of it is...
So you think he is innovated, and also, anyone can file the patent office, and then stuff gets dealt with.
In your hand, and out of nowhere, God. But the proof is all the stuff that I've been able to do now.
So all these thoughts are from the time you were a baby. These are not things that you've learned. These are things that you had in your mind from the time you were born.
From before that time, because I remembered that I had been someplace else before.
H. Baird says, I went through a period in grad school where I could lucid dream all the time. First thing I'd always do is just give myself a female body, only then would I start flying. Can't imagine why. Benekagami says, to be fair, Hannah, don't you have difficulty thinking in images that could be affecting your ability to remember dreams? To be fair, I don't remember most dreams vividly either. I think some of these dreams are just his fantasies turned illusions. I think you're probably right on that front. In terms of his dreams being actually delusions that he has basically Mandela affected himself into thinking were dreams. And possibly with the aphantasia. Quite possibly.
Now, what's interesting, that voice that I heard, that's my voice now. So it was like my greater self was leading me through, and periodically would...
Like Tony from The Shining, not the Kubrick version, the King version.
Show up again in other dreams.
Your older self was secretly guiding you all along. Spoilers for, again, Stephen King's The Shining.
And I went off and became an actor because my mother wanted my little brother to be an actor, and I thought if I became an actor, you know, I would get my mother's affection. It wasn't until...
That's sad.
Until my mother was dying, and I'm talking to her, and she told me the reason that she was babying Antonio was because he had asthma, and my father always questioned whether it was his son or not because he looked so much like her family and didn't look so much like him. And I realized, my God, if I had followed my proper course, I could have saved my mother, because the knowledge that I had, you know, I had the grand unified field equation. I had already put that together, and at 7, 8,
he thinks he came up with a grand unified field equation at 8. Something that would win you a Nobel Prize. He thinks he has done it 8 years old.
I was working with these things, and then I went through all of the hell that I had to go through. Being accused of domestic violence, all of those things, and I thought it...
He has received several, at least, maybe, I did a little reading before this today. He received at least one restraining order from a former partner who accused him of beating her. And he admitted in one interview in the early 2000s of hitting an ex of his as well. So,
it was a curse.
Keep that in mind.
Curse at the time. But it was really removing me from advancing down the wrong path. And during that period of time, I started waking up in my dreams again. And I start going back into that palace. And I remember...
Toreador says, if you came up with the unified theory equation, you would have to create a new award for that achievement.
All of these things, and I started patenting them. As I moved along, I got in touch with Michael Hudak. He was the president of the University of Science and Philosophy, because I was studying a guy named John Keeley, you know, who had worked with frequency back in 1870s.
Frequency. We're on this frequency shit.
Built the first, what do they call it? Self-sustaining engine.
A perpetual motion machine, a fiction that cannot exist because of the laws of physics.
back in
We
1872.
saw Furiosa today, highly recommended. Yeah, I didn't realize it was coming out so soon. I'm excited. I really like George Miller.
But he wouldn't tell people how he built it. And I was watching a program with Del Pons, and somebody in the audience said, doesn't John Keely's work remind you a lot of Walter Russell? And a bell went on. And so I got in touch with the University of Science and Philosophy after watching some stuff about Walter Russell. And
Walter Russell, I looked up. He's going to cite Walter Russell several times, many times throughout this interview. Walter Russell was not a scientist, he was an artist who had opinions on science that were more philosophical in nature and were never taken seriously by the community at large. He was basically a Terrence Howard of his day. He was someone in the arts who may have had some interesting things going on in his brain and had a lot of outlandish hypotheses that were never tested because they weren't even really full thoughts that make sense.
and
So he's basically citing another person from the past similar to himself.
Michael Hudak, took me under his wing and started talking to me, but he was more into the philosophy and the love that Walter was talking about. But my intention was to rebuild the periodic table, build a new periodic table, because
Why? It's already organized by periodicity. What are you gonna do to it?
stuff I had learned in college. I went to school for chemical engineering the first year over at Pratt. And at the time, I think it was like 108 elements. And I told the teacher, the professor, about the relationship between hydrogen on the spectrometer and carbon and silicon and cobalt. And I was like, it's the same exact color, same tone, just doubled in each octave. And he was like,
In each octave, like it's musical. He's talking about elements on the periodic table and he's discussing octaves.
no, each element is the same element and it will always be that element. And I was like, you don't see the relationship. So I left school and I was going to spend 40 years rebuilding the periodic table. And I found out that Walter Russell had already did that.
Again, Walter Russell was an artist. Profane Priestess Amber says, the University of Philosophy and Science. What university? A university of science is nonsense. A given university may have a school or college of philosophy, but the college of a subject does not make sense.
And he did it based upon the natural curvature of everything.
And when you say rebuild the periodic table, what do you mean specifically?
Well, the way the periodic table is laid out, the periodic table they have now,
Let's see.
it
a
looks
periodic
it looks
table.
like a
Pull up
box.
Jamie, can you pull up the periodic table of elements?
an image of it.
It looks like a straight box.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't show the relationship that between every element, there's two
All right, here's the periodic table.
Yeah, there it is.
you'll see hydrogen sitting all the way over there by itself, but they don't show that hydrogen has the same tone as carbon.
The same tone. Hydrogen has the same tone as carbon. That means nothing. What do you mean tone? This is chemistry. What does this have to do with tone? That is not an appropriate word to use in this context. I don't even know what you mean.
What do you mean by tone?
Same tone, same key of E.
Same key of E.
Same key of E. 40.5 hertz. The next one would be like 81 hertz. You go to silicon, it will double up and would be 162 hertz. You'll go to cobalt and it'll be 324 hertz. It's, in that base, if you were to take the angles of incidence or the tones that they create, their color. Like you can turn color back into sound.
You can turn color. I know a lot of this is just me repeating what he's saying, but I think it's a good exercise to repeat things like this so you hear them again to make sure you fully don't breeze past it. He just said, you can turn colors back into sound. At what point were the sounds colors? At what point were there colors? We were talking about elements on the periodic table, and then you started talking about tones, and now there's colors that are turning into sound. Like, unironically, I'm not diagnosing. I'm not a psychiatrist. I don't have the ability to diagnose. Terrence Howard, like, needs help. Like, he is speaking in this faux profundity, in this vacuous nonsense with this false sense of, like, importance. This is mental illness. He needs help. But instead, Joe Rogan's like, yeah, come on my fucking podcast so millions of people can either laugh at your mental illness or believe it, and then you can suck more people into your delusions? Terrible. Terradona says, I should have gotten some of the good shit for this. Yeep.
Based upon, it's the same wavelength, it's just twice as long or much longer. So all you have to do is keep dividing light by 2.
Keep that up, Jamie.
You keep dividing light by 2, and you'll
Divide light by 2.
ultimately get back to the audible sound of it, because there was a relationship between light and color, sound and tone, matter and shape. I put, I sent over Walter Russell's.
I was trying to get to that. That's what.
Yeah, it's Walter Russell's periodic table that he put together. Now you compare that to what we Mendeleev's periodic table. You'll compare Walter Russell's to it, and you'll see something completely different. It's unwinding.
Whoa.
It's unwinding.
Whoa, look, it's in a line. It's in a squiggly line now. Whoa.
And you see there's a
Do I think he may have synesthesia? Maybe he sees color with sounds. If he does, it would explain that comment.
relationship that hydrogen.
So you had figured this out at a young age?
I had already seen this. This was
Like, I don't know anything about this, but I do know that the person who made it wasn't a scientist. But the periodic table is organized the way that it is because it's telling you something. The shape is not arbitrary. It's all in boxes like that so that by its location you can understand things about the element. Like the noble gases are all over here, you know? Like the ones with fewer valence electrons are over here. As it gets more towards this direction, like we're talking about different kinds of elements, and down here it's different than up here. Like, they're organized by periodicity because the construction of the atom tells you something about the element. It's not arbitrary the order all of these things are in. Did you not take, like, basic... Like, this is, like, high school chemistry.
This was all inside of that palace. I had access to it, and I knew the
So you
relationship.
saw this in dreams.
I saw it as a circle. Everything was a full circle laid out, and each area was just expanding, like wrapping a rag around your hand. The first wrap, you know, it's so tight. The very first wrap is so tight. That's the first one that Walter Russell did, yeah. But go back to the wiggly one. This is how I saw it more so, but as a vortex. But you'll see there's a relationship between hydrogen, carbon, silicon, cobalt, rhodium. They're all bonded. They're all sit as the middle point between two noble gases. So those things don't really exist. It's only one substance. Now the problem is, the first thing that we're able to perceive is hydrogen. That's the first visible element, because before it is too dense for us to perceive it.
What?
You understand what I'm saying?
No.
Okay.
But as you reach into the next octave, the carbon octave, and they call that a bisexual tone, because
New band name, the Bisexual Tones.
carbon octave, and they call that a bisexual tone, because the carbon has two tones to it. It has a negative side and a positive side. The part where lithium behaves, lithium is contractive. Beryllium is contractive.
What?
Boron is contractive. But the moment you get to carbon,
Nobody does it like molten boron. Stone Court Bell says, I always thought molybdenum was gay.
you balance it out. It gets to a perfect balance of plus and minus 4. So it's a double tone. then nitrogen is -3.1, -3, oxygen is -2, fluorine is -1. Now, the balance of this, all of those are mates. Fluorine and lithium naturally mate. If you have lithium bonded with any other element, the moment that fluorine is introduced, it will break all bonds violently so it can bond with fluorine. Same thing with beryllium and oxygen. That's why it said, and what they've tried to keep from us, if you
They've tried to keep from us. There's the paranoia
have,
and the persecution.
you want to break water into its component parts of hydrogen and oxygen, all you have to do is introduce beryllium or the sound of beryllium.
The Sound of Beryllium, another pretty good band name. Not as good as Bisexual Tones, but like they could open for the Bisexual Tones.
And oxygen will violently break away from any other thing, even hydrogen, to bond with that beryllium. And now you can have it just with the frequency of it. And since the hydrogen is smaller, hydrogen...
Nemesaur says the elements laid out by Russell have elements before hydrogen, including 3 unknown noble gases. Ooh.
Well, that waveform, you can send that up into one tube, the oxygen into another tube.
Is he a flat earther? He is not. He actually mentions flat earth in this video, and he is not a flat earther.
Without using electrolysis, without using heat. It was just through frequency.
Damn, Sassy P with a $99 super chat on YouTube. Thank you, first of all. Says, was hoping you would go over this. Have a good holiday weekend. Thank you, you too. Having a cookout on Monday. It's going to be fun. So thank you very much. I really, really appreciate that. That's a very generous tip.
Frequency and the proof of
I
it.
hope you have a great holiday weekend too.
If you go back up just a little bit higher, we know the relationship between sodium and chlorine. They're equal and opposite mates. If you get out of the pool and you got chlorine and you're itching from the chlorine,
I'll add that to the costume goal. I have to add that manually, but that is a very big tip. So I will add that to the costume goal after stream.
all you have to do is get some real salt and rub that on your skin and it'll turn right into an oil.
No. First of all, he's confusing table salt with sodium. He's saying, oh, well, sodium reacts with chlorine, so if you have chlorine on your skin and you rub table salt on it, it'll react and be benign, when in reality, table salt is already sodium chloride. It's already reacted. Sodium is so reactive that if you just had sodium, you would only have it for, like, seconds before it explosively reacts with water in the environment, including in the air. If you've ever seen sodium, it explodes! Salt at your home is sodium chloride. It's already a thing, and it's not an oil. It is not.
It naturally neutralizes each other. So everything has an equal and opposite mate. The lithium becomes sodium in the next octave, doubles the same exact tone, just doubled and wider. The sodium becomes potassium in the next octave, widens up. The reason that arsenic kills us is because our DNA has nitrogen and it has phosphorus in it, because nitrogen unwinds into the next octave right after silicon and becomes phosphorus. Our DNA has both.
This feels like a much less usable and useful chart than the periodic table. Because, like, with the periodic table, you can look at things, you know, near it, adjacent, down, and to the side. This, it's all linear, so I feel like we're losing the visual ability to see relations well. This just seems like a way, way, way worse version of the periodic table.
Those in there, but it's going by tone, so the moment arsenic, which sits as a -3 on the next octave, the moment arsenic is introduced, the body thinks that, oh, this is my thing that I need. And it tries to wrap itself around the arsenic, but it causes the DNA to unravel because it's 4 times as large as that nitrogen was. And those other little elements, titanium, vanadium, chromium, manganese, and
Does he think that atoms that have a higher atomic weight are inevitably larger?
iron, all of those aren't true elements. Those are isotopes. Those things,
Like, they have more mass. They have more atomic mass, but...
those first three are the full tones. They make full spheres. But now it becomes elliptical with titanium, vanadium, and chromium. And on the other side, it's like when, like I said, if you wrap the rag around your hand, the first wrap, really tight. You can't get much out of it. Second wrap, you damn near can't see the difference of it. Third one, you start seeing hydrogen. The fourth wrap, you see carbon. I need a piece of paper or a rag, and I can show you that twist. But in between each one of them, by the time you get, nature does not allow us in the silicone octave for there to expand out. But there is the same.
Oh, by the way, chat, this is random. I did get the cord. That's the hookup cord, so I can start ripping VHS stuff myself for VHS Day. Excited about that. So this weekend, going shopping at some thrift stores for some VHSs. So if you want to chip in to the weird VHS fund, you can do tips, and they'll also go towards the costume month goal. End of plug.
Titanium, vanadium, chromium, magnesia, and iron, that exists between aluminum and silicone. But nature doesn't allow us to unravel that, but now with the wave conjugations, we can. We couldn't do that before because we didn't know the angles of incidence that were necessary to open these things up. And you couldn't do that with the platonic.
Ask our Red Letter Media for Nuki VHS. They have tons. Oh, did you not see? You don't know? They destroyed all their Nuki VHSs. They literally put them all in a wood chipper. Watch that episode. It's good.
Solids, because the platonic solids.
Yeah, he's saying manganese, but wrong.
Were averages and approximations. They
Magnesay.
Like, I've said a number of.
Oh, I see what he's doing there. Okay. Yeah, he's completely reading that wrong. That's funny.
Times. You show me a real straight
Magnesay.
line in nature.
Nuki.
Everything in the
Why haven't they released Nuki on Blu-ray yet?
nature, if everything in the universe, everything is expressed in motion, all motion expressed in waves, all waves were curved.
Okay, I gotta take this one step at a
In
time.
nature, if everything in the universe, everything is expressed in motion.
What do you mean everything is expressed in motion? What do you mean everything? What do you mean expressed? What do you mean by motion? I'm turning into Jordan Peterson.
All motion expressed in waves.
All motion is expressed in waves. No, it's not. Look, here's a motion. That's not a wave. Here's a motion. That's not a wave. What are you talking about?
All waves were curved.
All waves are curved. I'll give you that.
Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So the
Okay, that one's not original.
greater the action, the greater the reaction. The greater the reaction, the greater the resistance. The greater the resistance, the greater the curvature.
Okay, you lost me again.
Because the universe is based off of equanimity, which
What?
Einstein left out in his theory of relativity. The balancing side of the gravity was caused by electric force. Electricity is always seeking a higher pressure condition. It spins north.
Electricity is seeking a higher pressure condition. He's just putting words together. Captain Squid says, this kind of reminds me of a conversation I had with a coworker. He was convinced that global warming is impossible since CO2 is heavier than air, so if we really were pumping that much into the atmosphere, we'd all be choking on it. Oh, boy.
The East is trying to get to the center of an area, the center of a cone.
Oh, yeah, he's into the electric universe stuff.
But the
For those that don't know, there's a conspiracy community intersects with flat Earth, though they're not necessarily synonymous, called the Electric Universe, and it's people who think that gravity isn't real, that, like, the nuclear forces are not real. They think that the only force that actually exists is electromagnetism, and that it dictates everything in the universe. They're wrong, to our knowledge.
the next electric wave is coming, so it gets
Not all waves are curves. Good to know. Joan Spoon, thanks for a 3-stream streak.
pushed out, and as it's pushed out, it gets to the vortices. And that's on those pieces, those vortices. Now, instead of it spinning northeasternly, centripetally, it's forced to spin.
Is he worse or better than Jean Ray and Time Cube? Because I'm getting similar vibes. You're correct in the similar vibes thing. Like I said, I think this is a mental illness similar to what Jean Ray had. It's that same faux profundity. It's that same exuberant excitement over, I've discovered a new thing that no one else ever knew. And then when they describe it, it's just like rambling nonsense that's genuinely like inscrutable because it only means something based on their specific personal definitions of words that are not what the words actually mean. So I would say he's getting there, but I'd say he's not as bad in that Terrence Howard is better at articulating himself than Time Cube guy was, Jean Ray. But I don't know if that's I don't know if Jean Ray might have started more articulate too, and as he got older, maybe the stuff just started breaking down, you know, in terms of being able to communicate well.
Centrifugally, and it spins southwesternly. And it expands itself out, it decays, it keeps decaying until you get 4 magnetic waves that hit each other at 120-degree angles. At that point, they reconvert back into the electric field, and then they make their way back to their source again, whether it's the star, whatever star it came into. What happens when we get older? We expand at our equator, right?
What? He apparently hasn't seen Alex Chu, because Alex Chu is 53 years old, and he doesn't have any belly.
We get shorter at the top. Why? Because the electric force is pushing in and condensing.
No, that's not why there's a tendency for people to gain weight as they get older. Incorrect.
And the magnetism expands out at the equator. The electron field, the electrons, that's just discharged electricity, devitalized electricity, coming from the
devitalized electricity. We're like 3 steps away from bleeding someone or leeching them.
sun, coming from the earth. It's the waste product from it. But it hits our magnetic field, and then it gets pulled right back in and gets compressed again, and now it becomes electricity for the earth, and then it pushes itself right back out again at the equator. The equator is 5 miles wider than the poles. Electricity.
Right, but that's because the Earth is rotating. It's because of the spin of the Earth. What are you talking about? Hydrate. I could do that.
Einstein left that out of his equation because he coupled electricity and magnetism together and didn't realize that
electromagnetism are the same force. I should say electricity and magnetism are the same force. Electromagnetism.
That electricity was the equal and opposite of magnetism. Electricity being the contractive field. You breathe in, that's a contractive thing. You breathe out, that's a magnetic thing, a radiative thing. But they use the term magnet as an attractor. But to magnify something means to what? Make it larger. Increase the space. That's the work.
Words can have multiple meanings.
Work of radiation. That's what Walter Russell was talking about all those years. That's the work of radiation. It's the electricity between the things that pull them together. The Coulomb force that supposedly opposites attract and push each other away. If that was true, then hot air and cold air would seek each other out. They're the same substance, but just but in a different state. They move in opposite directions from each other. Hot water and cold water move in opposite directions from each other. The reason 2 magnets seem like the North Pole is attracted to the South Pole, because if you had 2 rivers or 2 hoses with water coming out of them, and you pointed them at each other, what are they going to do? They're going to be pushing against each other. But they...
Sorry, real quick, I got a $3 tip I missed. Clover Lover with a $3 tip says, my front yard is yard, but I think flowers are okay. But they all event that. You are great. Okay. Thank you.
a line to where the male enters the female and is able to come out. So they've been fooled by their senses. They've been fooled by their eyes.
Plus, light is electromagnetism. It's the electromagnetic spectrum. True. Peoplord says, how do you feel about the term dirt waffle? I'm not familiar, and I don't know what that means.
And have missed the whole
Oh, that looks good, Catalina Gearbox. I love a good patty melt.
picture of it. Are you familiar with Khalil Gibran?
Yes.
He wrote a book. He wrote The Prophet, in 1923, but he wrote another book called Sand and Foam. In that book, he told a story of a man who had been away from his family for 4 months working, and he was excited to come home. And as he was coming home, he knew that the mountain, when he saw the mountain, that he was close to home. So his 5 senses started having a conversation, and his eyes says, I see a mountain, I see a mountain, I see a mountain. And so the ears perked out and said, I don't hear a mountain. The nose sniffed and said, I don't smell a mountain. The tongue tasted the air. I don't taste a mountain. And
Oh, it's from Claire's channel. Gotcha.
the other 4 senses started speaking among themselves, and they came to the conclusion that there must be something the matter with the eye because they couldn't perceive it. But all of these things, we've been misled just because...
We get it. You think you're very special and you see things other people don't. We get it.
We've been fooled by our senses. Our eyes see 0.05% of the entire electromagnetic wave. We're blind cosmically, but we judge everything by what we see. And they've done that with science for so many years.
Pro tip, do not lick the mountains. Here's the thing, Terrence. We know about the rest of the spectrum because we've developed tools to detect them, so even if you don't see them with your bare eyes, doesn't mean we as humans do not have the capability of seeing more than meets the eye. The Autobots wage that battle to destroy the evil forces of the Decepticons.
Years, you look at E equals MC squared, that talks about expansion. It does not show how it's divided. If ever you've never breathed in twice without breathing out.
There's 4. There's 4 breathe-ins.
You breathe in and you breathe out. You charge and you discharge. There's no... So how is it that the breathing in, they're acting as if...
He keeps trying to, reason via metaphor. He's like, well, this thing is like this, so this thing that's kind of like that also is like this other thing.
The universe is just expanding out, breathing out, and it's going to dissipate out, and they never include the contractive side of it, breathing in. Because they were
Are you talking about the expansion of the universe? There used to be a hypothesis about a big crunch being the antithesis to the Big Bang, where things eventually back in. But I think they have found, as to the best of our knowledge, that there isn't going to be that, because the universe basically reached escape velocity. I don't know if I'm taking what he's saying too seriously. Thank you, Catalina Gearbox, for the recipe.
Led by Newton, who said everything moves in a straight line unless affected by something else. And we know that...
He said that everything in motion stays in motion.
Not to be true. But they built the entire two-dimensional plane, the Euclidean space that we live on, that we work on, that we try and define.
Kagami says, Terrence believes darkness is its own energy or whatever, doesn't he? Like he thinks hot and cold are opposing forces and is going to ask why there's no equation for cold, isn't he?
And curved nature by two-dimensional space, and we never include the curvature.
I don't understand why he...
Like Alan Watts
Why does he think everything is only described through Euclidean geometry?
No one would be attracted to a Euclidean woman because she would just be straight, all straight lines. It's the wiggliness, it's the curvature that brings the balance. Everything has to have the balance, the electric side and the magnetic side. I can talk about it, but I can show you even better. If you can...
Can I stop you there? The concept of the periodic table, the way the periodic table conventionally is addressed, do they address these things as being isolated or intertwined?
They interact, but they feel that carbon will always be carbon, and it will have its half-life and keep breaking down, but it's still
Something having a half-life means kind of definitionally that it's not going to be the same thing forever. Do you know what, like, decay is? Elements decay into other elements because over time they lose electrons, right? What?
still be carbon.
You're saying it'll always be carbon, but if you look at its half-life, like, okay, the very concept of a half-life for that element kind of dictates that what you just said's bullshit, doesn't it? Peeplord says there really seems to be a Goldilocks zone of income where you'll have access to mental health care. How bizarre, right?
And they don't understand that it unwinds
Women are wiggly? True. I'm glad I got my wiggly pills.
and becomes nitrogen. Nitrogen unwinds and becomes oxygen.
So the periodic table, that the conventional use of the periodic table, and what is this other gentleman's name again?
Walter Russell.
Walter Russell. Walter Russell's version of the periodic table. How is Walter?
Chromatic Cuttlefish says general relativity, when Einstein first developed it, predicted that the universe would not automatically be stable. It would be expanding or contracting. At the time, the universe was thought to be essentially static. So Einstein introduced a fiddle factor, cosmological constant, to keep it static. He later felt rather silly when Hubble discovered galactic redshift.
Walter Russell's version of the
Redshift being, redshift is when something is going away from you, blue shift is when something coming toward you. So they were able to detect that the universe was expanding.
periodic table perceived by people.
Peeplord says, what I'm hearing in chat is non-Euclidean, not a straight insight.
People who study this.
Well, now everyone wants to use it. If you can go to in my book, there's a picture of Einstein reading Walter Russell's first book, second book, The Universal One. Because when Walter wrote this in 1926, he sent it out to 300 different universities and physicists. And one of the quotes that Einstein says on his deathbed, I should have spent.
Doppler was the Doppler effect, which is the same thing but with sound waves. Fenekagami says, Terrence, we live on a non-Euclidean plane. Euclidean geometry only exists on paper. 2, they do account for the discharge. It's called equilibrium. It's why you exhale and inhale. It's why you exhale and inhale. It's about maintaining equilibrium and homeostasis.
More time reading Walter Russell's work.
Yeah, like again on the Doppler effect. Like if you have an ambulance or anything with a siren coming towards you, if you're walking down the street or driving, you'll notice as it's coming toward you, it has a slightly different pitch than as it's going away from you. That's the Doppler effect.
That's how, and now they're taking it under their wing. But remember the Michelson-Morley experiment from 1887? They were trying to prove whether there was an ether or an effect of an ether, or the quintessence that everything came from. That used to be called the fifth element. That
the luminiferous ether.
Everything in that,
which they helped debunk.
From antiquity, everyone understood that something doesn't come out of nothing. It's like,
I hate when they say, like, ancient people understood. What do you mean understood? You mean believed? Harold Edelman with a 10-stream streak says back to double digits. Hell yeah.
Like when you look at the air, it looks clear, but you change the pressure condition. The balance of the change of pressure condition, we call that condensation. It creates clouds. And you change the motion conditions, whether it's moving quickly or slowly, it's going to become snow, it's going to become rain, it's going to become hell. So everything comes down to just one of two forces. Either you're breathing in and filling up something, or you're pouring it out. But the scientists, they ignored Walter Russell's work because he didn't include any.
Again, Walter Russell is not a scientist. He was an artist.
But the scientists, they ignored Walter Russell's work because he didn't include any equations inside of it.
Yeah, you kind of need to show your work. If you're like, I have a hypothesis, then you need to expound upon that. You can't just be like, I have an idea, guys. Okay, what do you have for us to evaluate? Just the idea. Oh, okay, go do an experiment or math or something. There's nothing to review here.
He talked philosophically regarding how things behave in comparison to laying down and following some Newtonian or calculus writing.
Newtonian or calculus writing.
You know, he said he based things based on let's explore them naturally. And that's what I did with my book. Once what Walter Russell was missing, he didn't have the wave conjugations. He didn't have the mirror shapes, the all shapes. And that was because of a mistake that was made 6,000 years ago, maybe. They took the flower of life, which was that symbol.
Mm-hmm.
If you could go to my book, tcotlc.com, there's an example that I...
Benekagami says, I think this is a combination of lack of education and mental illness. He's clearly tried to learn a surface level of a bunch of subjects, but he didn't understand a lot of even the basics past that and fill in the gaps with his delusions. Oh yeah, this isn't uncommon. We've seen this on Tinfoil Tuesday. At least I've seen it. I don't necessarily show you those people all the time, but...
put in there on page 64. And I show the period, I show the element,
yeah, Professor Dave did do a video on this. Professor Dave has a strong scientific background in education. I do not. So if you want the specifics as to why Terrence is speaking nonsense, definitely check out Professor Dave Explains channel.
fundamentals. If you could possibly pull that up, Jamie.
What was that .com again?
TCOTLC.com. You'll see in there the mistake that they made because they believed in straight lines, because the church was promoting the idea of straight lines. You just tap on right below there. There's, yep, download. No, just go to the center of the page and right above that, and you see initial public draft, just tap on it. And if you go to page 64, on the right side of the page, right there, on the left side of the page, you'll see the 5 Platonic solids. Now these, all of our axioms, all of our postulates have been built off of these things. This is what Euclid went down to Egypt and pulled these things together. Pythagoras worked on them, and these were the undisputed fundamentals of God that he used to build.
What?
If you tap onto the Flower of Life, Platonic Solids things, it's going to take you to a video. Turn it, you know, don't have to tap it. But it'll show you the Flower of Life that they took this from.
Again, this is literally just, it's a pattern. It's a pattern of circles with other circles. It is not magic.
But you'll see that instead of following the natural curvature of these 64 circles overlapping, they averaged the space where they met. And they invented straight lines.
Mm.
Why
did they do that?
Straight lines do exist. Like, you can see straight lines. Any 2 points, you can imagine a straight line between them. In nature, like, carbon organizes itself in straight lines in certain circumstances, like diamonds or other crystals, right? How do you think that lines don't exist? I'm so confused. I get that a literal, like, Euclidean or what's the other word? Sorry, not Euclidean. Whatever. A geometric straight line is a hypothetical construct, right? But it's a real thing, right? We're just describing an imaginary space between 2 points.
Because they believed that the world was flat. They believed the world was flat at the time. And the church promoted.
No, because Platonic's the 3D solids. Platonic is like the, you know, the D&D dice are like Platonic solids.
Pythagorean theorem comes off of this cube, a squared plus b squared equals c squared.
So they wanted to use all of these intertwining circles and create straight lines.
Because that's how they thought everything came down to straight lines. They thought the world was flat. And I was
This annoys me. No, they didn't. Nope. Nope.
like, oh my goodness. They didn't open the flower properly. So the next one would be the icosahedron.
Now, the flower of life, it's very, very old. The concept is very old. What was the origin of the concept?
What do you mean the concept? It's a shape. The concept. What do you mean it's a bunch of circles? It's circles. Okay, we're good. We're good. Catalina Gearbox says, so you like non-Euclidean geometry? And there's a link.
Hello and welcome to Rock Tour. In this look, as you come closer, this effect becomes weaker. No new.
Oh.
Again, this is only because we are now in a hybrid geometry.
See, that's gonna make me vomit.
It's the oldest symbol known to mankind. It's believed that it was
the oldest
Anki.
symbol known to mankind? No. No. Nope. That's untrue. That's a lie.
The brother of Enlil, if you go by the Emerald
Sumerian
tablets,
text.
the Sumerian text, that was the one that created mankind. Because if you look at mankind, and there's a point I want to make with it. I want you to stay on the book, go back to go to 130.
Peoplord says, can we channel the spirit of Georgia O'Keeffe to explain the flower of life to these guys?
Before on the book. And this is what that other gentleman being told me to do. He said, why don't you just take the pieces that make up the flower and put them together based on universal ratios? So
Terrence should have spent more time watching MathNet.
The story you are about to see is a bit
Oh god, is this like an educational Dragnet parody, but for math?
short. The names have been made.
Hold on, let me save this for VHS Vault. If you give me a VHS thing, I'm gonna save it. Let me save that real quick. Oh. Oops.
if once you're able to pull it up.
164.
Page
Does anyone else remember the Mathams family? No? Okay.
134. 134 in the book. So this is the juxtapose of the mistake they made. Yep, just tap right onto that. Yep, just tap on it. Now, this was made by David Johnson, one of our programmers, Argos Fuel.
You believe the oldest complex symbol is the swastika? How are we determining complex symbol? Because, like, there was cave art and stuff. Handprints, people trying to depict different things. What constitutes a symbol? You know what I mean? Like, were there no circle, just even, like, circles? A dot? I don't know.
So if you go to the far left and tap on that, I took 4 of those triangles. And, wow. And you can scroll around. This is what happens when 4 bubbles meet. This is the negative space where they can't touch each other.
Okay.
This is hydrogen. And as I was saying,
What do you mean it's hydrogen?
electricity is always trying to get to the center of that triangle, but it gets pushed out. And now you see it has 4 contractive poles, which is the electric poles. Just go around it from like
I think he thinks it's higher. No. What's the atomic weight of hydrogen? Does he think that, like, the atomic weight, each thing, it's just 1? Yeah, I got no idea that. I have no idea how he's justifying this in his head. Why this is hydrogen.
horizontally, yeah.
I should have known that. It's the first one. It's the most abundant element in the universe. Duh.
That's 4 contractive poles because electricity is seeking a higher pressure condition and forcing it in, where magnetism is seeking a lower pressure condition and spun out. So the vortices, those tips, that's the magnetic field. That's where they begin. But it has an equal attractor and an equal amount of repulsion. So if you go to what happens when 8 bubbles meet, they gave me the patents to that. I called that the tetrahedron.
He patented a shape?
This is
I don't think you can just patent a shape.
So this is the negative space in between 8 bubbles.
8 bubbles. This is a negative space where 8 bubbles meet, and you can scroll around.
And this is ignored when they're concentrating on straight lines.
Completely, because this...
Like, what? How irresponsible of Joe Rogan to listen to this and give it credence as if he's saying anything. Like, this is absurd. If Joe Rogan isn't doing a bit here and just doing this for content, Joe Rogan also needs a CAT scan.
You look from the
Like,
top...
this is bad. This is ridiculous. This is nonsense. This frustrates me beyond all belief that millions of people, 4 million, I think, 6 million people have watched this shit. Now, don't get me wrong, I know a decent number are people like us looking at, because, like, wow, this is, like, out there. I know that. I know Charlie did a video about it, so I know a lot of people have seen it. But there is a non-insignificant amount of people who will watch this and believe Terrence Howard is a secret genius and buy a bunch of woo-woo nonsense because Joe Rogan platformed it.
Top, I haven't violated anything. It fits perfectly inside of there. But this is the negative space where 8 bubbles meet, but you'll notice it has 8 contractive poles, but it only has 6 magnetic poles, 6 vortices, so it has a greater electrical potential than a repulsion. So maybe this is the strong nuclear force, and the previous one was the weak nuclear force. So I was like, okay, I called this the Huntian after my son. So I was like, what happens when 6 bubbles meet? If you'll go to the one right in the center. Now you see that it has these huge bubbles, fast moving, but there's 6 strong spheres that's going around this, but the greater attractor has grabbed the 2 weaker attractors. And this looks just like a photon, and guess what? It has 30 poles. What is the speed of light? 299,752,400 something. They rounded off to 300 million kilometers per second squared. But
Benigami says he justifies this in his head because he knows that hydrogen is key in physics for high energy production and chemistry, and he thinks he's discovered some energy secret, so hydrogen must be involved. That's a fair hypothesis on where he's getting any of the ideas for this.
But if you look at it from the top, you'll see that I haven't violated anything.
I don't even know, like, this falls into the category of you're not even wrong. This falls into the category of, like, Lacanian foreclosure. Like, what is it even trying to say? It's so inscrutable. It's so... The message being sent is faulty. What do you even mean you haven't broken anything? You haven't built anything?
It looks like what happens in nature. So I was like, okay, so they gave me the patent.
What do you mean this looks like what happens in nature? It's 3D models of random shapes of negative spaces between spheres.
But you'll see that there's 6 unaccounted electrical poles to it. So I was like, what happens when 12 bubbles meet if you go to the one right next to it? Another stable structure. That we...
Like, what do you mean it's a stable structure? Like if these were blocks, you could stack them? Like, what? What do you mean they're stable?
Basically see in nature.
Like, he thinks he's discovered new elements or molecules or something, like Iron Man 2.
There's 4 unaccounted electrical poles to it. 4 spin around it. You can count those 4. You'll see 1 at the bottom and 3 on those sides. This is the basis of crystallization, laws of crystallization. That forms. And you can go to the last one. I was like, what happens when 24 bubbles meet?
Fuck yeah, do 24, do 36, keep it coming.
This is the negative space. If you pull to a horizontal on it, this is a negative space where 24 bubbles meet. This is where you cannot distinguish this from the background because all of the electrical potential has been accounted for.
What? Benigami says, Terrence, a photon is a stray electron that functions as both a wave, energy, and a particle, so no, that looks nothing like a photon. It can't, by definition.
This would be the Bose-Einstein condensate.
The Bose-Einstein condensate.
where something becomes indistinguishable from the fabric of space itself, the final state of matter. Something, and the proof of this, the Platonic solids, they have a thing called discrete symmetry. You can put the cubes together, maybe you can put the dodecahedrons together, but you can't put all of them together. But you can take the wave conjugations right here, and they form supersymmetrical systems where everything aligns. So there's a site that James sent over to you, and this will be the final thing, and then I'll be quiet for a second. But because this is this right here. Now these are other sculptures I've built. There's a video, and you'll see that flower. If you'll pop it up from Terry's linchpins that he sent you, you'll see, and this is one of 4 supersymmetrical systems that I patented. And the reason I patented it was because when Walter Russell put his stuff up, you have to just go down a little bit, and we're going to get to grab not.
I can't wait in 80 years for a new crackpot to cite Terrence Howard like he's citing this other crackpot from the 1920s.
That one. We're going
The circle of life.
to get to gravity
The circle of nonsense.
in a second. Not that one. We're not even there yet. There. Tetratarian wave conjugations. Now, these are all of those systems put together. This is where 12 bubbles meet, the Aubrians. Mm-hmm. And then I
you
put
made
5
like little snowflake decorations for Christmas.
of them together, and they make these natural starfish. But then when I put 10 of them together, they lay themselves out, and they predict all distribution of matter within the electric field.
How has his agent not gotten him help?
And you can
Oh, congrats, Catalina Gearbox.
see where 6
Like, it is irresponsible that the people in his life have not, like, talked with him and sat him down and been like, we need to get you to talk to someone. Like, a therapist, honestly, with his money, a psychiatrist. Like, come on.
6 bubbles meet as you get to a higher point on it. Those where 6 bubbles are meeting, still fitting perfectly where the 12 bubbles are meeting, and where the 4 and where the 8. That's a super symmetrical system. I put 12. If I put 20 of those where 6 bubbles meet, the Antonians, they make a natural dodecahedron that's naturally curved. If I take where the 12 bubbles meet, that's where I made the linchpin from. Ultimately, from some of those pieces you got right there.
He can function in society and take care of himself. That limits what people can do for him. But that just, again, rich people that means that wealthy people effectively can never be helped if they are mentally ill. Because if you are a certain level of wealthy, you will never not function, because you can have someone next to you that's gonna manage your money for you and take 10% off the top. You know what I mean? Like, at a certain point, people need to be protected from themselves.
That all shape of it. So that was...
Like, I understand that we used to be overzealous, and someone like me would have been locked up in an institution for being trans, or someone for being gay, but I think we've overcorrected. We have overcorrected.
One of the first things, but when Walter Russell came out with his book, and he introduced his periodic table, he watched as different people went up and collected Nobel Prizes for deuterium, for tritium, for all these things that he had discovered. And I was like, okay, let me wait until the patents are granted.
Oh, yeah, I don't think he needs to be locked up. Like, I was making a thing about, but in honesty, an outpatient therapy would probably be best for him. You don't need to actually put people away unless they're an active danger to themselves or others. But, like, there should be something coercing him into getting help, and it should be in his personal life, but it's not. Everyone around him is failing him. His wife is fucking failing him.
Before I'll talk about it.
Captain Squid says, also, I'm not sure Howard has an agent right now. He's suing CAA because he didn't think they got him enough money for Empire.
So that they won't be able to stop it. But what makes more sense?
You think you found one of his dreams? Oh, God. Scared to find out whatever this is gonna be.
Start back.
Now look here, Mr. Humbug. If you think for 1 minute that...
I say, young man, what seems to be your problem?
Who are you?
Mel Blanc,
My angles
based on the voice.
are many, my sides are not few. I'm the dodecahedron, and who are you?
Woo-hoo-hoo! Phantom Toll Booth, nice.
They invented straight lines in opening the flower, or where you actually take the individual pieces of the flower and put it together based on universal ratios. Which one do you think is how the givers of that knowledge intended for us to use it?
Well, it makes sense because you're accounting for the negative space and the straight lines are not.
Bingo.
Yeah, that it must be something. And so, and then these are all physical representations that you've created
Yep.
that are all of those things.
Same things. That's the Aubryan right there.
How is this?
Okay, is Joe literally this stupid? Part of me was just like, he's being irresponsible and using Terrence Howard for content despite knowing he's a wackadoo. Does Rogan genuinely not know that, like, this is nonsense? Does he not know that this is, like, nothing and means nothing in reality and is entirely the delusions of a very, very sick man? Because he seems like he's into it, like he's genuinely trying to grasp it.
Received? Like when you talk to people about this?
Oh, man, they first, because I didn't show them, I hadn't shown them, I introduced it with, let's talk about our fundamentals are a little bit off.
Like, I know Joe Rogan's stupid. I know that, but this is, like, beyond just being dumb. This is not recognizing someone ranting and raving on a street corner about the end of the world. Like, this is beyond, like, dumb. This is, like, mentally not well if you don't also recognize that this is not good.
No straight lines.
Right.
So I reached out to Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Neil deGrasse Tyson.
I saw him at an event up front, at Fox. And he was like, hey, man, yeah, I'd love for you to come on my show, do my radio, do my TV thing. I would love that. I was like, yeah, but I've got something I want to introduce to you. And it was only 36 pages. It was a treatise.
I only sent him 36 pages of my babbling nonsense.
And I told him it was controversial.
Neil deGrasse Junior High. I was wondering if anyone else had that thought.
And I sent him over the 36-page thing that had the wave conjugations in it, but I started it off with 1 × 1 = 2. And he went in on my treatise, redlined everything. He attacked that I had talked about Walter Russell and Victor Schauberger and
Neil deGrasse Tyson's personality completely aside, what did you expect to happen when you sent a scientist your thing? If you consider yourself a scientist, would this not be some sort of peer review? Like, are you not happy to have your work criticized? Because if not, you're not doing science.
John Keeley and Tesla as the people that I looked up to. Mm-hmm. He attacked them. But then he started attacking, the 1 × 1 = 2.
How did he attack them?
Oh, he was because I asked him. I said, under what conditions? I said it's illogical where the square root of a number added to itself will equal more than that number squared. But that's what happens with the square root of 2. That's what happens with most of the numbers. I was like,
thanks, Avalon Babylon, or Avalon of Babylon.
How is it that multiplication, if it means to make more and increase in number?
Multiplication does not mean to make more or increase in number. That is not the definition of multiplication. You can multiply things by negative numbers, which reduces the number. You can multiply things by 0, which equals 0. You can multiply things by 1, which equals itself. Multiplication's definition is not to make more. Fenigami says, give Joe a break. I bet he knew this was going to be nuts, and I bet he got high as balls beforehand. I mean, he pushed back on Tucker, but what do I know? I just learned I've been misunderstanding photons for years or so. I think Joe Rogan's always high as balls. And that wouldn't excuse not being accountable, or that wouldn't excuse for him being accountable for who he platforms without pushing back.
how is 1 times 1 equaling 1 part of the multiplication table? Now, I understand that if you're seeing it one time,
Right.
but we call that once.
Or 1 times 1. That's described in multiplication as 1 times 1. If you were multiplying 1 times 1, it's 1, because it's 1 time.
But the moment
Oh, Lou's decided she's sick of me yelling at the weird light box. Bye, baby. See you later. Hbeard says, I'm a physicist and work at a national lab. It's very common for random people to send us their theories of everything. Most of it's like this and a long email full of nonsense. Some of these people will try to send us papers, quote, published in predatory journals where they do no real peer review and charge huge fees. Neil deGrasse Tyson probably receives hundreds of these a day and just ignores them. Yeah, it's again, this is a thing that happens in certain mental illnesses. It's really sad. And seeing it seen by millions of people, and some people, like, taking him seriously is frustrating to no end. Instead of recognizing, this is a person who needs help! Fenekagami says, I know I'm just desperately trying to have some faith in humanity. Yeah. Aren't we all?
that you had that add the times in there, that multiplicative indicator, that means there is more than one. So now each equation is supposed to be balanced. You know, that equal sign is supposed to show that there's a balance between these two numbers over here and a balance on this one over here. What happened to the other one in this equation? It didn't equate. And then I took the square root of that number. I took the square root of 2, because all this started in 3rd grade. I was arguing with my teacher because we were talking about the square root of 100. Oh, my God.
Is that your phone?
Yeah, that's my detox thing. I'm supposed to detox right now.
How do you detox? You detox on a timer? What do you do?
There's, my wife got me these things, you know, because I'm supposed to take this.
What is that?
And
Pure body extract.
and there's another one.
Advanced daily cellular detox. What's in this?
Snake oil.
Oh boy. I gotta
And
get out
this
my
too.
reading glasses. What's in this stuff?
Just things to counteract the natural the metals that we have in our bodies that
Counteract the metals. Again, his wife is clearly into woo-woo stuff as well. They are both just buying bullshit and spreading it to millions of people.
wear us out.
And you just take these periodically throughout the day on a timer?
I gotta do it now. I gotta do it.
Okay.
now. I take a dropper, part of that dropper, and then 4 sprays, and it removes the parasites from your system.
You are a wealthy American. There are not parasites in your system. Other than other wealthy Americans. But seriously though, this obsession people have with parasites, if you are living in a developed nation with food standards, it is unlikely you have any parasites. Stop taking dewormer.
Like oil of oregano, like using oil of oregano instead of using antibiotics.
Hey, my will to live is high enough to play the video again.
And have you felt an effect?
Yes.
Yeah. What do you feel when you take
Well,
this stuff?
I used to have really thick, dark circles under my eyes. That's gone away in the last 6 months.
Fenekagami says, but Hannah, secretly Tesla figured out a solution to our energy crisis, and they have been hiding it. All of this is definitely possible, just like ivermectin, a dewormer, definitely cures COVID. That's why Trump never took ivermectin to treat himself when he got COVID.
6 months I've been using that. My skin, I'm 55 years old.
Oh no, Alex Chu calling. Stone Corbell says, I feel an effect. The placebo effect!
I'm 55 years old and I smoke. Do I look like I'm 55
No,
years
you don't.
old?
You look great. And do you think that's because of this?
I think, well, I'm gonna show you a picture.
You don't want to neutralize the natural metals in your body either, that'll kill you. But what if I'm afraid that I've been tricked at the secret mutant prison I work at into being knocked out by a shape-shifting sexy mutant into injecting a bunch of metal into my butt so the mutant prisoner can use the metal in my bloodstream to escape via a series of badly CGI'd platforms in order to get out of his plastic prison? Then can I take it?
Of what I used to look like when my wife met me. And I don't know if you could. She'll be mad if I throw this up, but she's a beautiful one. But this is what I looked like when my wife met me. I was 256 pounds.
Were you eating differently?
It was a long way for a Magneto joke. Any length is long enough to go for Magneto.
Well, now I'm intermittent fasting. I follow her routine. But she turned me from that into this. It's like she shined up.
Yeah, you look
within me.
about 15 years younger. Now.
Yeah, and that's because of her. I still smoke my cigarettes.
Why do you do that?
I'm a crackhead. I don't know. I don't know. Everybody has to have some vice. Like Alan Watts said, you got to have some balance of beneficence and rascality to you.
We have a fan in here, by the way. If you wanted to smoke in
Yeah,
here, you're
no.
more than welcome to.
I don't trust people, that walk around, people get so offended by gurus a lot of times and yogis because they think they're these calm and passive people, and when they get angry, they're like, oh, that was a directed anger, that was a purposeful anger to wake you up to something. And then they find out they have a girlfriend. They find out that they smoke, and they're like, oh,
Vices.
this is a lie.
Right.
But that's the real person. That's what I loved about Alan Watts. He had a wife, and he had his mistresses. He ended up dying with one of his girlfriend and his wife, off in his little place. But he spoke the truth. He was honest. Life is about the give and take. There's a balance in there,
To be human is to be flawed.
It's to be beautiful.
Yeah, it's part of the beauty of us. And it's part of the why we create. I don't think you create from a perfect place of enlightenment. I think part of the chaos of being a human being is the beauty of the creation. It's why we create. The most fucked up people, the best artists are some of the most fucked up people.
I hate this shit. I hate the trope of the tortured artist. Like, you can only create really great stuff if you're depressed or dealing with other mental health issues. No. Don't valorize other people's struggles like that. That's not fair to them. Like, don't do that. I fucking hate that shit so much, you wouldn't believe it.
My favorite musicians, my favorite comedians, my favorite actors.
Yep.
Almost all of them are fucked up.
Yeah, my uncle used to call it, he said, if you don't get any flower to grow unless you throw some shit on it.
So back
What
to
are my
Neil
thoughts
deGrasse
about Alan Watts? I don't recognize the name off the top of my
Tyson
head.
and his critique of
So
Tesla.
he threw shit on, he was like, well, Tesla stuff worked, but Tesla was never really respected and out there, and I guess he wanted me to support.
I guess I've never really seen the guy, so I don't have any... Seems like he's into Eastern spiritualism. So, like, I assume I would disagree with that stuff because I'm not into, like, woo-woo, but I don't know. I don't know what his specific claims are.
Bohr or Schringer or Feynman or any of those people, and I'm looking at the Feynman diagrams. I'm like, you made all these things up. You're basically doing the Mr. Spock thing. If you want to find the answer to something, then you cancel out all the possibilities, all other possibilities, and you root it down to one thing. So that means going through the whole universe.
I want to be very clear. When Spock said that was not an original thing. Spock was quoting the fictional character Sherlock Holmes. So that is not a Spock thing. That's a Sherlock Holmes thing that Spock was quoting.
universe to answer one question. And that's the problem with probability. That's the problem with Heisenberg uncertainty. That's the problem with Schrodinger. All of those were just these probabilities because they had taken the ether out. They forgot the electromagnetic wave.
Mm-hmm.
It had to have a medium in which it followed on. It had to have something in which it was moving on.
They don't exist in isolation.
No, they do not. And it cannot be the cause of its own action. An effect can never be the cause of the action. The chicken cannot the egg cannot come before the chicken. The chicken has to be there first in order to lay it. It has to mate. And
where'd the chicken come from, Terrence? The answer was egg, by the way.
what Einstein left out was the equal and opposite of magnetism. So back to Neil deGrasse, when he wrote his response to my paper, and he said, if you have any other questions, you're going to have to see somebody else, and he wouldn't take my calls anymore. I was like, okay, so I wrote the book based off of those responses, and I reached out to another guy, Dr. David Tong.
But that would be very, very interesting that would be his take as a public educator. That he
Joe, have you considered, and again, Neil deGrasse Tyson kind of seems like an asshole to me based on his personality. But nonetheless, regardless of what you think of him as a person, I'm sure he's a busy guy. Like, he's a really busy guy. He can't spend time every day responding to Terrence Howard's nonsense. He already went through his 36-page treatise, as he called it, and marked it and talked to him about it. If he doesn't accept the criticism, if he doesn't accept being told, hey, here's why you're wrong, why would he interact with Terrence anymore?
He wouldn't want to talk to you anymore.
The reason I wanted to talk to him was because of his show, The Cosmos, that he was doing after that incredible guy, Carl Sagan did. The very first
Carl Sagan would also say you're dumb.
episode
Okay, he wouldn't use those words, but he wouldn't think you're right.
he had was talking about Giordano Bruno.
I'm gonna have to bring up the actual Sagan quote. Was this on video or was this just in a book? Let's see. Okay, well, I can't find it, but I know there's a quote somewhere where he was effectively like, they say they laughed at Einstein, they say they laughed at, Copernicus, but they also laughed at Bozo the Clown. Don't use the argument that everyone's laughing at you, but they laughed at Einstein. Because most of the time when people are getting laughed at, it's not because they're secret geniuses, it's just because they said something funny.
And he said that Giordano Bruno was looking for that grand unified field equation, and maybe one day somebody is going to do it. And when they do it, it's going to change the world. And I'm like, dude, I've done it. I've got it here.
Nobody really laughed at Einstein. It's a well-trodden pop cultural belief, similar to believing that Einstein got bad math grades, which is not true.
He attacked it with such vitriol that I was like, oh, okay, maybe I need to walk away from this. Dr. David Tong from Cambridge, a professor at Cambridge, did a video on physics of the world, and he said it's all a lie. And he explained that there was these 16 fields, that everything that they had taught was this, and they gave the best understanding and interpretation that they had of it.
Not laughing about GME now, are you? I mean, it's down, and they diluted on you. So, like, don't know what you're on about.
It was all a lie because they didn't understand how it worked. Why? Because the Michelson-Morley experiment from
Pretty sure it's Michelson.
1887, where they were trying to define the ether or the earth in this etheric space. Problem was, they kept with Newtonian laws, so they thought the ether didn't move. They thought it was still. But there was another guy, Larmor, that did it in early 1800s, and he went off of Thomas Young, who influenced the Fresnel lens, influenced Fresnel, came up with the Fresnel lens.
And is it meme stock day? No, but they tend to get mad and take out their frustrations on people that criticize the meme stock. It's fine.
But he talked about a moving ether that had opposing vortices. So I didn't learn all of this stuff until I was getting ready to have conversations with people because I
I
was
bought 12K worth at $10. Now would be a good time to do something about that, probably. Not advice, but, you know,
looking,
just a thought.
where has this work been done? But if you look at Giordano Bruno's work, it looks a lot like my stuff, but he still had straight lines, and I think he put those straight lines in there to appease the church.
Wow.
So that he wouldn't get killed.
Oh my God.
And they still killed him. They hung him upside down in 1600, the Catholic Church. 1599, hung him upside down in a stake and set him on fire because he refused to recant that the God that they were talking about was not the true God of the universe. It was much larger than that. Their story went back 6,000 years. And there's other traditions and tribes around the world where their stories go back 200,000 years. And they made a lot more sense. So how have we limited ourselves? You take Noah having 3 sons, Shem,
Oh, now we're on Noah. Great.
Japheth, and Ham, and one was black, one was Asian, and one was white.
What?
Does that make sense to you?
No, I'm very confused.
But we
You'll give me money if I'd like. You're feeling sorry for the brokies today? That'd be great.
subscribe to that.
Give me all your money. Yeah.
We
Right.
ascribe to that dogma, and everybody's entitled to whatever opinion they want to have. I don't think that opinion is right.
We're going off in so many different directions.
But
I
Neil
do want to
deGrasse
talk
Tyson-
about this.
okay.
I do want to get to this because I would love to know what you believe happened. But the Neil deGrasse Tyson thing is so.
It's some old racism. Oh, is that a thing people actually used to believe? Holy damn. H-Baird says, yep, the ancients made more sense. According to the ancient Egyptians, the god Ptah created the universe by jerking off. That's how I do it.
confusing to me that
Justification for segregation and slavery? That's unfortunate.
so he was critical of Tesla.
He was critical of Tesla, he was critical of Walter Russell, and he was critical of John Keeley.
This is not his field of study though, right?
No, he's astrophysicist. He's an
Right.
astrophysicist, but Walter Russell talked about that the Earth. Walter
I
Russell.
think we should have a rule that trolls should at least be on topic. I think that's fair. I think they should get one warning, and then after that, I'm just going to ignore them unless they're on topic. You don't necessarily have to ban them, but I shouldn't interact, because my ADHD will make me keep interacting.
Talked about the fact that the sun gave birth to the Earth, that it didn't coalesce from some field, and the proof of this. Do you guys know that the Earth is drifting away from the sun?
Yeah, slightly.
This is the mistake I made at the Oxford, because they wouldn't allow me to.
I have to use the bathroom real quick. I will be right back, and we will continue with this nonsense. Oh.
to bring my notes or anything. So I said the drift was 6 inches a year. It's 0.6 inches a year. So if you add up how long it would take the Earth to move, and all of the planets in every solar system is drifting away from their primary at this same exact rate, like 1.5 centimeters. So this is a universal expansion that's happening with everything moving away. So them saying and the Webb telescope have proven that those galaxies couldn't have formed 13, 14 billion years ago.
How? What do you mean?
If you would...
I like that you just said stuff like, the James Webb telescope has proven those galaxies couldn't have formed 14 billion years ago.
Just add up...
Citation?
Linear...
You can't just cite a specific telescope.
How long it would take the Earth to go from the sun to 93 million miles away. It's 9 trillion... Hold on.
Let's go.
I did all of the little calculations.
These are not little calculations.
Hold on, done.
I love that expression, but...
Little... Well, man, don't turn my phone off. Don't do that. Every time I get ready... Well, because I know they're watching me right now. And they're mad at me.
They.
Who's they?
The people that want that. Our entire world economy is based off of the politicians and the authorities that give the politicians their accreditation. And those authorities, those universities, are all based, their entire curriculum is based off the Platonic solids. And our world economy is based off of 1 × 1 = 1.
You think they fuck with your phone?
No, it's not.
Phone?
Oh, I'm sure of it, because now I have to turn it off for a second.
Do you ever drop your phone? You ever drop your phone?
I've dropped my phone a number of times, but...
You ever think that might be what's going on with your phone?
And then I buy another phone, and the same thing happens. I'm 5
you get
minutes...
burners?
I used to, but then my wife would think I was cheating.
Yeah.
So I was like, no, I don't need that. I don't need that. I made that mistake way too early, in our relationship, and it cost me 8 years of toil and pain. But I ultimately made it back, and I'm so glad that, we produce 1,500 sperm per heartbeat.
Not me.
Women are born with 200 to 500,000 eggs in each of their ovaries. They don't get any more. The amount of buildup, the need to reproduce for males is great, and we're 98.7% identical to simians, to chimpanzees. What do they have? They have a harem by nature.
Mm-hmm.
Is Terrence Howard about to segue this physics conversation into advocating for harems?
There's only...
Who had that on the bingo card? Anyone? Terrence Howard advocating for personal harems while discussing his breakthroughs in physics?
A 1.3% differentiation between us and them, and that 1.3% is...
Hey, there's a pretty big difference in that 1.3%, since we're a entirely different species.
Supposed to dominate over the 98. I'm just glad I'm 55 now, and sperm production has slowed down.
You could always get a phone that you don't use as anything other than contact a couple people.
Yeah, but that would work. But I'm like, if they're going to hear, they're going to hear.
Yeah, well, that is an issue. So
this is the math. This is the math. So it would... So 5,280 feet in a mile, 12 inches in a foot. Therefore, it's 1 mile equals 63,360 inches. So the number of years that it would...
People Lord says, if we crossed into the territory where hating Rogan is ableist, where's the line for math man? Does personal wealth enter into the equation? Is one of the variables reach? Is it multiplied by malignancy of ideas? That's a good question. Joe Rogan was in the UFC, so he probably got punched in the head a lot. I don't know if that, has anything to do with things.
It take for the Earth to move 1 mile is 105,600 years. So that in order for the Earth to reach where we are at 93 million miles, it would take 9,820,800,000,000 years for the Earth to get here. Likewise,
Yeah, why does he think the Earth is from the sun, like it birthed it?
Mars, at 147 million miles away from the sun, it would take 15,780,480,000,000 years for Mars to get where it was. So at a given point, Mars was here in the Goldilocks zone. And now Venus is going to inherit the Goldilocks zone next. The sun will give, Mercury is under a higher pressure because they're still under the mistake thinking that there's a void in space. So they forget that Mercury is under the highest pressure possible. So it can expand. It's like hydrogen. It's like
Gamerg says this is the guy who wrote a multi-page study on how he proved 1 × 1 = 2, and he's the biggest podcast on the internet pushing his nonsense with no pushback. We're so cooked. Oh yeah.
like those octaves
This is bad.
before hydrogen. So the atmosphere, the iron isn't able to release any oxygen and the oxides, but when you get to 67 million miles away from the sun, the pressure is a little less, but it's still so much higher than the pressure on Earth. It's like going deep into the very belly of the Earth. That pressure is so very high. And so now the clouds, there's a great deal of sulfur, there's a great deal of ammonia and all of those things in it. But once Earth moves to where Mars is.
What's the next level of the Gish Gallop? The Terrence trample.
Venus is going to slowly move and will be right here. You know, in maybe 5 or 6 trillion years, Venus will be right here, and humanoids will appear again and unwind the same way. And that asteroid belt that we have right now between Mars and Jupiter, that used to be a planet. And I believe that they had humanoids that developed on there, the same way that everything, that's the periodic table. They call it the periodic table because these things happen according to periodicity. They happen under regular events. You change the motion and pressure conditions, the crystallization changes. We call it a different element, but it's the same substance. Like my hand is one substance, but if I do it like this and do it like this and do it like this, it looks like a whole different thing. And they can call it a different element, but it's the same element under different motion and pressure conditions.
Okay, but it's not. Just because elements are made out of more elementary particles doesn't mean they're all the same thing, because when those particles are in different configurations, that's what makes it the different elements. Oh my god!
I believe that Ceres used to be a planet when it was here, and the humanoids on there didn't recognize that we don't have a solid core. Everything expands as a sphere, and no sphere in our universe, no bubble has a solid core. We're
Spheres... What?
perceiving it
Sorry, I'm at a loss. This is rough.
as a solid core.
This is hard to do for hours straight, because it's just nonsense and nonsense and nonsense.
But there's not a solid core there. There's just a bubble. And at CERN, with that Hadron Collider, that particle
Hadron.
accelerator, I believe they did the same thing, and they popped their planet.
They popped their planet with a CERN, with their version of CERN, like it's Mondus, and they're like an image of Earth but reversed, with the same exact events.
And it became that asteroid
Maybe on that planet it was called the Large Hadron Collider, and he didn't just mispronounce it. It was just called something different on the other Earth.
belt.
Really?
Just take it, if you add up all of the weight of the mass of those of the asteroids in
Why do you think we know the mass of all of the asteroids in the asteroid belt exactly? I'm sure we have an estimate, but like... You think we've gone out and actually taken measurements of all of them? I'd imagine it's an average, and it's irrelevant. I'm sorry. I feel like I start, like, debunks, and then I just trail off into a frustrated noise, because I start, and then I realize the futility. Like, first of all, obviously he can't hear me, but that's irrelevant. That's everyone on this show. People I watch don't watch me, generally. But there's the second layer of, like, it wouldn't matter. Like, this is such a non-issue, this is such a nonsense argument that debunking it lends it credence it doesn't deserve.
In the asteroid belt, it will probably equal the same mass as that of Mars.
I thought the concept of the asteroid belt was, well, first of all, there's the concept of Earth 1 and Earth 2, right? So
Yeah.
Earth 1 was a planet that was hit by a planet, and that's how our moon was established.
When have we seen that happen in nature?
Terrence, we didn't see it because humans weren't a thing.
We haven't seen it yet, right? But these things take a long-ass time, and we don't have a whole lot of ability to see things. Our ability to see things, even with the James Webb Telescope, is fairly limited, right? Which is one of the reasons why they're able to find these galaxies that should not have been able to be formed in such a short period of time, to the extent that they have, which confuses them if they're looking at this 13.7 billion.
Someone else pointed out that the study they're referencing with the James Webb thing, it turned out there was a math error, so...
Billion-year-old universe. These things should be much older.
By that logic, what's even the point of the stream? Very true.
Right.
In order to
I don't know. What is the point of this stream?
be this size.
What's the point of life?
In order to be in the position where they're at. So you believe that the sun is the origin of these planets.
Of all the planets. Every solar
solar
star
system.
within its solar system gives birth to all of these other planets. This is what Walter Russell had talked about. This is what Neil deGrasse, and they attacked him for, because he talked about the drift, this natural drift, and that didn't make more sense. And they didn't have the idea of dark matter and dark energy then.
Right.
They didn't even come up with that. And now we understand 4% of the universe is visible,
Right.
and 75% of it, 70% of it is dark energy, and 20-something% of it is dark matter. Unperceivable things, and they say that's because they needed to figure out how would they get the spin and create and have the galaxies.
Why do they
the
hold
spiral
together?
galaxies?
Right.
Well, what my team did, Chris Seeley, who's my he's he's my Scotty. We use the same simulator that they use at Princeton, and we took linchpins, and we haven't even introduced linchpins yet, but it'll be a great introduction for.
Captain Squid says, Hannah, you know the answer, and there's a link. Crush your enemies, see them driven before you, hear the lamentations of the women.
This is good.
I can't play more. I can't play this because copyright, but I get it.
For it. We took linchpins, this configuration of where 6 pentagons meet, and we put them in particular order. There's a link for that right inside of the thing that James Pellegrini sent over to you, if you'll pull that up. And we rebuilt the planet Saturn without gravity. And it has the rings with no animation. It has the rings and the hexagon that's observed at the very top of it, without dark matter, without dark energy, without gravity, showing that it's an outward force pushing down that creates the planet. If you can pull that up, and he explains it out, it's like 3 minutes long.
And where does the matter come from?
The matter, remember, that's condensation. If you were to picture, before we watch it. Yeah, before we watch it, let me explain something. If you were to picture the waves at the ocean, you know, the darker the waves, the deeper the water, you can't see a distinguishing fact between them until they crash into each other. That splatter, that little foam that comes out, it lasts for a couple seconds, and then it settles back on there, and it's just the balance between this force and this force. That's the physical universe. Those few seconds that it takes that matter, that more dense water, and the foam to recoalesce and get balanced again with the surrounding environment. That's the entire time that our...
Welcome, Raiders. Thank you, DJ Shay, for the raid. Make sure you go check out DJ Shay here on Twitch. We're taking a look at Terrence Howard's Joe Rogan interview, and I am taking psychic damage like never before.
universe, or all these universes have worked together. But if you play this is at the very beginning of my book. That's why I went on that at the Emmys, and I was like, look, I've got something else to do. I've been able to rebuild Saturn without gravity, with no animation, and then they clowned it.
I don't even know what he's trying to say. He rebuilt Saturn with no animation. Like, it's just like a mathematical model? Like, I don't even know what he means.
Of course they did.
Clowned
Well, this
it.
is not something that you could say in a soundbite, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you.
Oh my god, Rogan... No way. There's no fucking way Rogan is this dumb.
This is not something
Like, is this possible for someone to be this obtuse and not understand they're talking to a person with problems?
Your explanation of these things and your description of the very nature of reality itself is not
YouTube stream got clapped? That's not good.
something that should be taken lightly.
No.
It's something that, like,
Thank you for saying that.
it needs to be laid out, and it needs to be slowly examined in every
Citing policy violations? Oh, it's back?
because
Okay.
you've obviously spent a lot of time working on this. This thing here. So play this, Jamie.
Play
Well,
it.
there's,
And this is us.
What, Jamie?
just to clarify what I'm going to play.
Yeah,
there's
and turn
two,
it
well,
up.
Hold on.
Yeah,
There's two
you-
different videos. One's long, one's short.
No, this is going to be the short one.
Okay.
At
My
the,
computer just reset itself too because all
Okay.
these files freaked it out.
oh, yeah.
Government, man.
I don't know. I was about
Well,
to tell
they
you.
It's
don't-
Neil deGrasse Tyson. He
They almost
knows
have
where
to
your
stop
They do
computer's
not
sitting.
video. It'll be the first one.
This one, correct? Gravity.
Gravity is an effect.
Okay.
It's an effect
So
of
this is-
electricity. So
Okay.
turn it up, because
Yeah.
Chris does a full narration of it.
Oh, it's still. Hold on, my computer's still.
And
doing
he was talking to my wife and explaining to her what he had worked on, and it was. This is 6 years ago, I think, or maybe 5 years ago. But as soon as it allows you to,
Let's see.
The center.
rewind it just a little bit.
Object.
Yep,
Okay, here we go.
it's just 3
I
minutes
have
long.
two groups of vortexes, which are just like tornadoes, spinning tornadoes that are pointing towards the center. As I highlight this object here, you'll see it, that yellow line, right? So there's a bunch of those in there. There's actually 16 of them, and I'll highlight them
Oh,
all.
hold on. It's not doing anything. See,
No, it's about to happen.
No,
It'll
nothing's
come-
happening. My computer just froze again. Is what I'm trying to say. Something freaked out. like, my
Boxers,
computer.
thanks
I
for
might have
8
to
months
just
with
try to-
Prime.
You want to reboot?
I mean, I think it already did, but I'll try again. Yeah, hold on. We have to pause.
Yeah.
Okay, no worries.
Yeah, I can't.
Yeah, that's what it should be doing. But it's going to basically, you'll see.
Oh wait, that's weird. I have. I can
What's the matter?
what I can see on that screen is not what I can see on my computer screen. I can't even see that.
It's the fucking government, man.
You think it's not?
I think it is sometimes. I
Jesus Christ.
assume they listen to everything I say.
They do.
I'm sure.
They do. You took.
A lot of boring
The sense of self-importance that these people have disgusts me.
shit.
You took a bold stand, though, years ago when the governments were trying to poison their citizens.
They're going here.
You took a very bold stand that nobody else took. That's what I was like, wow, I appreciate you because I lost 3-4 jobs because I refused to take it. I refused
I
to
bet
take
you feel better about it now.
well,
Especially
Why? What?
when you know all these people that have health problems because of it.
People are not getting health problems because of the vaccines, you fucking losers! Joe Rogan, you piece of fucking shit! You have a huge platform, and you're doing this? YouTube! The fact that this is on your fucking platform is disgusting! What is wrong with you people?
cancers have increased 300%.
All-cause mortality up 40% in some age groups.
Pulmonary embolisms almost up like 500%.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what causes those? Fucking COVID, you idiot!
Yeah. Wonder what caused
Thrombosis.
that.
Well, the
Crazy.
spike proteins that's being built and collected within
I'm skipping this whole section because someone's gonna get stabbed,
the institution
metaphorically, in the kidney.
between the micro and the macro. That's what the linchpin was, and that's what we're about to see in the video. Was it able to come up, Jamie?
All right, here we go.
And this is rebuilding the planet Saturn. Go ahead.
The sound was coming through your speakers. Is that what it was? Time for a new laptop.
Oh, Jamie's dropping the fucking ball today. You have Joe Rogan money and you can't fucking produce?
I don't want that.
Towards the
Here we go.
center.
Here we go. From the beginning.
I have two groups of vortexes, which are just like tornadoes, spinning tornadoes that are pointing towards the center.
Sorry, this is in my head and now I have to. Now. Never.
As I highlight this object here, you'll see it, that yellow line, right? So there's...
I can do a Freddy bit towards fictional characters. Doing it towards a real person feels icky.
There's a bunch of
So
those
not
in
good.
there. There's actually 16 of them, and I'll highlight them all. There.
What's the timestamp of the anti-vax thing? A little after an hour in, probably close to an hour, 3 minutes if I had to guess.
Just so you can kind of see a little bit better. So they're all pointed towards the center, but they're arranged in what we call the linchpin configuration.
This video
Pretend
has
like you never heard of that.
6.5 million views, though. I'm not telling you not to report it, but realistically, nothing's gonna happen to it. It's Joe Rogan's channel. It makes YouTube money. They're not gonna do anything.
So there's one on the top. and
Again,
then three-
not telling you not to. Just, in my experience of a channel's this big, nothing's taking it down.
three in groups of three around that are spaced at 120 degrees apart, and the tilt of these ones on the bottom here is 109.5 degrees in relationship to the top ones that are creating this flat space on the top and the bottom, and they're spaced at 120 degrees radially. And then inside the model,
H. Baird says, I wonder if we're getting into a Mike Pillow type situation where people are feeding Terrence's delusions so they can grift off him. Maybe.
is three groups.
Jamie, there's
of
two
particle
sounds
systems
playing
with
simultaneously.
known
No, it's got sound in the background.
Oh, while he's
That's
doing
my
it?
wife talking. We're in the kitchen, and he's just
Oh,
explaining
okay,
this over
okay,
Skype.
Recorded from a
You record it, you didn't... You recorded this guy's video with your voices in it? It looks like he screen recorded, but he still recorded the screen recording with his mic input. That makes sense, because if I was trying to screen capture something, you know what I would do? I would do this! Because I was muted. Literally just mute it when you're doing screen recording.
This is
Oh,
over
okay.
Skype.
I was confused. Go ahead.
up to 1,000 pounds, from 2.2 pounds to 1,000 pounds. And there's no gravity whatsoever in this model. There's no center attractor. So it's just vortexes and two magnetic fields, a north and a south.
Okay,
polarity.
whoever this conspiracy theorist is he got this from is incredibly boring, so I am skipping.
And so
We get it, he thinks this makes Saturn.
There's a relation of
The exact... Can I pause this for a second?
Yeah.
So is he saying that just by doing these calculations, it created the exact form of Saturn, including the rings?
Just the exact form of it.
Just with the
So you
calculations?
change the angles of incidence that these linchpins, because remember, each one of these are opposing vortices. So there's 12 vortices to this that are opposing. So
He has a model of his little drone thing that he's showing off. It's cut off.
once the angles of incidence change, you change the motion and pressure conditions. You can now change the condition or the crystallization. So I was saying with the periodic table, now because we have the angles of incidence, material engineering can now separate the space between carbon and nitrogen or carbon and boron and have the same elements of titanium, vanadium, chromium, magnesium, and iron, or nickel, cobalt, nickel, copper, zinc, gallium, or germanium in those higher octaves. We can do that between silicone and phosphorus or silicone and aluminum. So the transparent aluminum now becomes possible because we
Transparent aluminum, like from Star Trek.
can now control the pressure and change the pressure and motion conditions where we
Seems like YouTube went down again.
couldn't do that before because they were going by Cartesian space at 90 degrees and 45 degrees straight lines. The Euclidean space that they've made up, this orthogonal or church-like space that they've generated because they wanted to promote that cross. That was the basis of all of that. Now we open ourselves up. This is what happens when four bubbles meet. This is the negative space from when four bubbles are meeting.
No, that's a 3D model of a fictional drone.
That's hydrogen. That's why when I went to Uganda, I was like, look, we have an entirely new system of...
Yeah, he went to Uganda and grifted people. So he's actually hurting people by taking their money for this.
Hydrogen that I've got a patent where we're able to, you won't need projectiles in the guns anymore.
I don't know if that's a benefit to humanity to make infinite fire guns, but okay.
It's if you pull up my patent for projectile.
Before we do that, though, should we finish this?
Oh yeah, finish it.
Let's finish this video, and then Jamie,
and it's
could
only
you
like a minute
also
longer.
I want to see a photo of that hexagon on the top of the Saturn. So let's play this.
It's just
Is this saying that?
what? So
Go to that image.
like if you picture dropping a pebble into a pond or a pool, everything expands in these longitudinal waves,
Right.
perfect spheres, unless there's something else in there. But when it hits the edge, it all starts bouncing its way back. And when these returning waves meet expanding waves, that's when we get our first geometry. So this is the proof that the universe is not infinite, but finite. Because you could not have shape without the returning waves, and the waves would not return unless it was bouncing off of the edge of something.
Look how
What?
strange that is.
Bingo.
Look how strange that hexagon on the top of of Saturn is.
Can we ban people on drugs from doing podcasts?
Or yeah, that's Saturn, right?
Yep.
Sorry,
And
I
then we
keep
don't
pushing the page.
even. And
That
he,
is so crazy.
he explains exactly how he built it, all the angles of incidence, all the pressure systems that he used. All of that is so it can be a repeated experiment. But they've ignored this. This is in the beginning of my book. You go to my book, that's the first page on there. Before you even open it up, I've got this, and we rebuilt the Milky Way galaxy the same way, and it predicts the star arrangement better than NASA does. And this is without dark matter. This is without dark energy. This is without the standard model. So
Is
it's-
dark matter or dark energy, are they primarily theoretical?
That's all theoretical. They've never witnessed it, and we couldn't prove that Michelson-Morley experiment that they did in 1887, which said that there was no effect because they tried to move a table around and change the angle of incidence for light to see if the light changed when you move the table. The experiment is like this. The mental experiment is like this. If you're going to experiment, you have an A structure, and you have an idea of how A behaves, and you have a thought that if you put A in a particular situation, it's going to turn into B. So let's picture it hypothetically like you have a bar that's maybe 6 inches long of iron. And you say, okay, well, I think if it goes into the freezer, that it's going to get shorter. So you're supposed to have 2 exact bars 6 inches out and leave one outside of the freezer, and put one in the freezer. And then you compare them after you see it. So A over X is equal to R times B over X. R is the result or the change between them. B is the change that occurs. R is what fraction or the X that you use in order to get back to A or to convert it to B.
Okay. We're about halfway through this. I'm gonna tap out on that for the day. I do have something to show you to wrap up today, so we're not leaving on that, so that's good, I guess. This is a little bit VHS Vault. So let's go out on a high note and learn about the moose. We may finish the Terrence Howard thing another day. Probably not, though, because holy shit, that's exhausting. But we'll see other things from him in the future, most likely. The following special presentation is intended solely for use by members of the Loyal Order of Moose. It is not for broadcast or duplication. Shh. Don't tell anyone. Don't tell the moose. I did see Kai's got suspended on Twitter. Oh, is Cass live? Absolutely, we're gonna raid Cass. That wasn't why I started later, but I happened to, so that's nice.
I'm telling you guys, working 2 jobs is really getting to me. I mean, lately there's just not enough time to do everything.
Tell me about it.
You're a happy bachelor, Louis. I mean, I've got a wife and 2 kids.
Bachelor, yes. Happy, I'm not so sure about.
Yeah, but Ed, your kids are still toddlers. Wait till they become teenagers. The parents curse.
Oh, you guys really sound grim. Eric, things can't be that bad.
That's open to debate. You know, come to think of it, James, you never seem down. What's your secret?
He has no secret. James has a big fat Swiss bank account. Keeps him happy, right?
You know, I never really quite thought about it that way, Louis, but maybe I do have a secret. But it's not in Switzerland. It's about 4 miles from here.
What's 4 miles from here? I mean, besides more traffic.
My moose lodge. As I'm sitting listening to you guys, I realize just how lucky I am. I mean, I used to have a lot of the same issues that you're raising right now, but not anymore.
Okay, we've got 15 minutes. Tell us why.
Okay, you guys sound like I used to. Take Ed, for instance.
You take him.
Oh, seriously. He's working 2 jobs just to try to make ends meet, which doesn't give him any time.
For me. I mean, for doing the stuff I used to enjoy. I mean, now I'm so busy, I've almost forgotten how to be who I used to be.
I hear you. And I think they call that looking for a little social activity. Like I enjoy at the Moose.
Yup, I could see Ed here. For today's busy men, Moose means more. More friends, more fellowship, more of that front porch kind of feeling that we used to have more time for.
And they say white people have no culture.
Real fellowship in this world of ours is rare. But for more than 100 years, people have been finding it right here. It's part of what the Moose is all about.
So that's what it's like to be a member.
Let's put it this way. I feel good about belonging to the Moose.
Okay, so you've met a lot of good people at the Moose. But what about activities to go with them? I mean, a bachelor like me isn't just looking for good friends, but good after-hour events to go with them.
Now, James isn't pushing a dating service here.
You know what I mean. Put it this way. When I get home, there's got to be more than just frozen pizza and another night of sitcoms and wrestling.
Does anyone remember in the Scooby-Doo live-action movie, they have the scenes where they have the teenagers acting like human teenagers, but they're not, and it has sort of a surreal quality where no one's quite acting right? This is the same. This feels like reptilians created this video in order to ingratiate themselves into human society.
Now, you've got that right.
We need a 3rd place, Hannah. Why not the Moose? 3rd places are great. But I'm sorry, this is just too earnest and Midwestern for me to not laugh at it.
That's sort of what I'm talking about.
Today's world may be richer.
Like, look at it, the wood paneling. It's very aggressively Midwest of a certain era. Certain people know what I'm talking about.
And faster than any we've known before. But the biggest hole in the world is still a rut. Here, among your fellow Moose members, there are no ruts.
Like, very white Midwestern.
Only new peaks, new frontiers. It's what you might call a whole new way of...
These fucking haircuts for the kids. Do people remember these goddamn haircuts?
after hours life. Louis, you're like a lot of unmarried guys. After that 9-to-5 routine, you'd like something really satisfying in your life. Well, just look around.
So you see my point? Activities from A to Z.
Well, maybe you have something there.
Maybe?
Whoa, hold on. For the most part, we're talking about two guys who have nothing more than themselves to worry about. For my part, Emily and I have 3 kids, 2 of them already in high school.
I think I'll stay a bachelor.
I'm not complaining, mind you, but knowing how to bring up a family in today's crazy world is a $1 million question. And I don't have a $1 million answer.
That's the nice part about the Moose. Dues on average are $35.
A month?
A year, my man, a year. And the Moose is not just for the guys, it's for the family too. There aren't many places left these days that have activities for mom and dad and grandma, grandpa, and the kids.
Including kids who need something solid in their lives, so a parent can count on where they're at?
Including kids who need something solid in their lives? So their parents can count on where they're at? Very normal conversational. Love it. I love this video so much. Unstable Deadbeat says, thanks for showing me this, Hannah. The things he's talking about are many of the reasons I began watching streams and engaging with chat communities, but now that you've shown me the Moose Lodge lifestyle, I found a new outlet, and will no longer be watching Twitch. Goodbye, everyone. The power of the Moose.
Yeah, for them too.
No one has to tell you about the
Lost like 15 viewers since the Moose thing started. Clearly they're off to join their local chapter of the Moose.
dangers that lurk out there in our world. Dangers to our marriages, to our kids, and to our communities.
What's a danger to your marriages? Is it gay marriage? Is this a weird club for white conservatives? Because that's the vibe I'm getting.
Sure, we've got all these self-help programs today's so-called experts are willing to sell you. But hey, what about a century-long track record of good old-fashioned family values in action?
Family values? Here's a cop!
That's what the Moose programs, events, and successes all add up to. What's nice about them is you don't have to be or buy an expert to make them work. All you have to do is show up.
Oh my god, they have a moose mascot. Wish I had a mascot. There's literally one of these down the street from you. What are you waiting for? It's only $35 a year. Also, America. Young white girl eating hamburger. Like, it's such specific B-roll is what gets me. It is such specific Midwestern B-roll.
Eric, you see my point? The Moose is a good fit for any family. Take it from me. Emily and the kids will thank you. Do you guys get the general idea?
It's just, I guess it's also comical to me because when you see TV, a lot of them are people from, like, LA, California. Midwesterners are a hardy Germanic people. We have a look to us that's different than people in California. So when I see B-roll of actual Midwesterners, it's hilarious to me because we're very funny. We're basically the hobbits of America.
I mean, the Moose has something for everyone.
Including my family.
That's been my experience with Sarah and the kids. They're not just looking for fun, they're looking for purpose, and the Moose has it. For example, there's the City of Children in Mooseheart, Illinois, where thousands of needy kids have been finding a family ever since 1913. Finding a way of life, finding a second chance. And then there's Moose Haven in Florida, where our aged members have found a safe haven for their later years. And when I say haven, I mean from extraordinary living quarters to state-of-the-art medical facilities.
Just looks like a brown, run-down old folks' home.
To a world of fun and pleasure. When you're a member of the Moose, good things happen at
You guys want to join us for a game of euchre?
every age.
So, how about you three join me tonight at the Moose?
Sure.
Now their life has become colorful thanks to the Moose.
So this is it, huh?
This is it. Come on in, man. How you doing? Good to see you.
It's a lot more than what I expected. Well, what's with the family center sign out front?
Well, a lot of our locations are designed to be exactly that, just like this one.
It's a knockout.
Well, so what have I been telling you characters?
I think that was the first non-white person we saw in the video. The way she's holding the fucking baby. No, seriously though, this is like nostalgic. I'm making fun of this, but in kind of a loving way. Because this is very Midwestern. A bunch of people drinking Mountain Dews at like this disgusting table. Their beer-battered fish or chicken or whatever. It just reads as a very specific era and place and time. This is what they took from
So,
you.
what do you think?
You know, I think I'm fine. I can go to a Dave & Buster's. I'm good.
Yeah.
Great, let me get some membership applications. You know, I don't know who's luckier, you guys or the moose.
The moose, of course.
Well, actually, I think all of us, because
the moose is loose. The truth is loose.
the moose is a one for all for one kind of place. I gotta tell you, it's nice to see my name on the preferred member list and credited with 3 new members. That's not to mention the free steak dinners and the special awards that go with it. I do something for the guys do something for the moose does something for me, and everybody's a winner. And for just pennies a day, they get plugged into the activities at nearly 2,000 lodges around the world. They help sustain the fantastic work at Moose Heart and Moose Haven. They give life to community programs of every shape and kind. And to top it off, their entire family gets a piece of the action throughout the entire year. That's kind of cool.
That's kind of cool.
In fact, that's unbelievably cool.
Well, that's mine now. Hold on. Give me a second. This is gonna be an emote. Let me snip this. Unbelievably cool. There we go. That's mine. Saved. All it was missing was a B-roll handshake, and that would have been about perfect. It feels like a Tim and Eric sketch, doesn't it? Like, it's so sincere in the weirdest way, but it's so corny. Like, I feel like I'm coming off as mean and hateful, but, like, really, like, it's just funny? It's just very funny. I don't know. Weird little time capsule. Alright, let's do a raid. Finally! Castafel's live at the same time as me, so we're gonna do a raid. I will be back tomorrow at the normal time, around 5 p.m. Eastern. If you want, you can join the Patreon. We'll be doing a Patreon-only live show on Sunday at 3 p.m. So I'll see you then. Have a great night, everyone. And have a good weekend. Bye.